Jones.
Yes.
Madame Lapointe.
Oui.
Mr. Sorbera.
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen.
No.
Mr. Falk.
No.
Mr. Patzer.
No.
Ms. Stubbs.
No.
Monsieur Simard.
No.
Mr. Angus.
Yes.
6 yeas, 5 nays.
G70 carries as amended. There are no amendments submitted to clauses 171 to 184. Do we have unanimous consent to group them for the vote? Not yet. Not yet? Okay, so we'll go to the first one. Shall clause 171 carry?
Yes. Yes.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag.
Yes.
Mr. Prusen.
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Madame Lapointe.
Oui.
Mr. Sorbera.
We.
Mr. Dreeshen.
No.
Mr. Falk.
No.
Mr. Patzer.
No.
Ms. Stubbs.
No.
Monsieur Simard.
No.
Mr. Angus.
Yes.
6 yeas, 5 nays.
Clause 171 carries. Shall clause 172 carry? Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag.
Yes.
Mr. Bruson.
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Madame Lapointe.
Oui.
Mr. Sorbera.
We.
Mr. Dreeshen.
No.
Mr. Falk.
No.
Mr. Patzer.
No.
Ms. Stubbs.
No.
Monsieur Simard.
No.
Mr. Angus.
Yes.
6 yeas, 5 nays.
Clause 172 carries. Shall clause 173 carry? Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag.
Yes.
Mr. Bruson.
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Madame Lapointe.
Oui.
171 to
Mr.
184.
We.
Mr. Dreeshen.
After all that.
Mr. Falk.
Yes.
Mr. Patzer.
Oh, yeah.
Ms. Stubbs.
Yes.
Monsieur Simard.
No.
Mr. Angus.
Yes.
So we've got 9 yeas, 2 nays. 170.
173 carries. 170, yes, we have Mr. Patzer.
There we go. Just waiting for the microphone. Yeah, we'd be good to group. I think we're on 174 now. 174 up to
184?
184. Yes.
Okay. So do we have unanimous consent to group 174 to 184? Yes, we do. Okay, thank you.
Agreed with us.
Shall clauses 174 to clause 184 carry? Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag.
Yes.
Mr. Bruson.
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Madame Lapointe.
Oui.
Mr. Sorbera.
We.
Mr. Dreeshen.
Yes.
Mr. Falk.
Yes.
Mr. Patzer.
Yes.
Ms. Stubbs.
Yes.
Mr. Simard.
No.
Mr. Angus.
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay.
Clauses 174 to 184 carry. Clause 185, G22.1. Mr. Bruson.
Again, maintaining consistency, but just to know, this amendment makes it clear that royalty owners are not party to a unit operating agreement and do not have to approve it. And the unit operating agreement is an agreement between the working interest owners and would not involve the royalty owners.
I don't see any further debate on clause 22.1. Shall clause 22.1 carry? Yes. Oh, just go ahead, Mr. Patzer. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, we were just kind of wondering if there would be just a further rationale as to why. Is there an example specifically to where this would play, where this would work? Like, what specific case would this be used in? I guess just for the sake of trying to make sure for absolute clarity on giving this type of approval to something. Yeah, or you, as you move the amendment. So I guess if you have an answer to, that's fine. But through you or through the chair to Ms. DeBruson, if she wants to answer, that's fine too. But I guess if the officials have an answer, I'm fine too. But I would think the parliamentary secretary would maybe have some comments on it, but.
Thank you, Mr. Patzer. Do the officials or Mr. Bruson, would you like to add any
I know
further
that
clarity?
the provinces have supported it, and I think that the officials would be well placed to answer the question in more detail.
Thank you. Officials?
Cheryl McNeil online.
Cheryl, please go ahead.
Thank you. This would be in respect to where there would be pools, petroleum pools found that straddle different administrative boundaries. And so in that instance, the parties would work together to agree to a unit operating agreement. And the unit operating agreement deals kind of with property matters, so the unitization of rights and interests. And while the other deals with procedural matters, so how the working interest owners would make those operational decisions. So those would be the differences between the two.
Thank you. Mr. Rishan?
Thank you. And then to Ms. McNeil, the transboundary pools, the assumption is that that is interprovincial, but are we dealing in any way, shape, or form? Do we have to deal with Canadian-U.S. boundary pools? Has that been taken into account in this particular discussion?
Thank you. Yes, so these amendments could work with respect to both domestic pools as well as those that would straddle international boundaries, such as Canada-US or Canada-France, for example, with the St. Pierre et Miquelon off the south coast of Newfoundland and Labrador.
So does this also deal with international waters then? That's a similar type of argument then that you would have there?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
The nose of the Grand Banks.
Well, the nose of the Grand Banks, for example?
I don't know. I may need to get one of our legal counsel to step in here, but specifically, this is with respect to administrative boundaries. Like it could be between, as you say, Canadian boundaries, like Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada, France, Canada, U.S. I don't believe that it would extend beyond kind of the outer continental shelf, the extended shelf, and into international waters.
Well, thank you, and perhaps some of the folks from Justice then could fill us in, as they would have some certainly input on international treaties and international waters.
Well, the specific clause is about the Canada-Nova Scotia Accord Act, so the Grand Banks is not concerned here. This is but because we are part of the Canada-Newfoundland-Labrador Accord area. So the scenario under the Canada-Nova Scotia Accord Act will be more likely where at the southern edge of the boundary with France or near the United States coast. But if it's with international waters, there's no other appropriate authority. The clause of UNCLOS says that it is the country that which continental shelf extends beyond the 200 nautical miles that will have authority. So it's not a transboundary pool in that case.
Okay, so there is a specific definition of a transboundary pool that you and as legal people and the department is satisfied with?
Yes.
Is that what I am to understand from that? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to Mr. Patzer.
Thank you. And just maybe the officials, if you could just help clarify another couple points for me here. And it says the regulator and the appropriate authority may approve the unit agreement, ... Just wondering, if we're dealing with interprovincial boundaries, would it then not include multiple authorities? Like, I'm just wondering, should that be a plural word or just again, we have a regulator and you have an authority, but are there not multiple authorities? Because as I understand, there's a federal department, then there's also the two different provincial agreements here, right? So should that be a plural word? Because if it's interprovincial, would it not be both of them? And if it happens to be in, say, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick waters, then what?
Well, according to the Interpretation Act, when we use the singular in a statute, the plural is included as well, so that's not a concern.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then at the end of the amendment here, it says if all the working interest owners in the transboundary pool are parties to it, the working interest owners, would that be like a company that's looking to drill a well, or is that the provincial government? Is that the First Nations in the area? Like, who are we talking about when we say working interest owners? Like, just wondering if you could provide some certainty about, or some clarity, I guess, for my own knowledge here as to what that actually means.
I think this one I'll let Mrs. McNeil answer about these details.
The working interest owners would refer to the operators that would be exploiting the field, so whoever they might be.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any further debate. Shall G22.1 carry?
Yes.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag?
Yes.
Mr. Bruson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Madame Lapointe?
Oui.
Mr. Saber?
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen?
No.
Mr. Fogg?
No.
Mr. Pratzer?
Yes.
Ms. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Simard?
No.
Mr. Angus?
Ben oui.
That's a yes. Okay. 8 yeas, 3 nays.
G22.1 carries. G23, Mr. Bruson.
This corrects a minor typo in the legislation, moving the word regulatory, replacing it with the word regulator.
Okay. I don't see any further debate. Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag?
Yes.
Ms. DeBruson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Madame Lapointe?
Oui.
Mr. Saber?
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen?
Yes.
Mr. Fogg?
Yes.
Mr. Pratzer?
Yes.
Ms. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Simard?
Oui.
Mr. Angus?
Yes.
11 yeas, no nays.
G23 carries. We'll now go to shall clause 185 carry as amended. Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag?
Yes.
Ms. DeBruson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Madame Lapointe?
Oui.
Mr. Saber?
Je pense oui.
Mr. Dreeshen?
Yes.
Mr. Fogg?
Yes.
Mr. Pratzer?
Yes.
Ms. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mr. Simard?
No.
Mr. Angus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay.
Clause 185 carries as amended. There are no amendments submitted to clauses 186 to 209. Do we have unanimous consent to group them for the vote? Not yet. Not yet. Okay, so we'll start with clause 186. Shall clause 186 carry? Yes. Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag?
Yes.
Ms. DeBruson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Madame Lapointe?
Oui.
Mr. Saber?
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen?
Yes.
Mr. Fogg?
Yes.
Mr. Pratzer?
Yes.
Ms. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Simard?
No.
Mr. Angus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay.
Clause 186 carries. Clause 187. Shall clause 187 carry?
Yes.
Let's call the roll.
Mr. Eldag?
Yes.
Ms. DeBruson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Madame Lapointe?
Oui.
Mr. Saber?
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen?
No.
Mr. Fogg?
No.
Mr. Pratzer?
Nope.
Ms. Stubbs?
No.
Mrs. Simard?
No.
Mr. Angus?
Yes.
6 yeas, 5 nays.
Clause 187 carries. Shall clause 188 carry? Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag?
Yes.
Ms. DeBruson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Madame Lapointe?
Oui.
Mr. Saber?
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen?
No.
Mr. Fogg?
No.
Mr. Pratzer?
No.
Ms. Stubbs?
No.
Mr. Simard?
No.
Mr. Angus?
Yes.
6 yeas, 5 nays.
Clause 188 carries. Shall Clause 189 carry? Please call the roll.
Mr. Aldag?
Yes.
Mr. Bruson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Madame Lapointe?
Oui.
Mr. Charbera?
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen?
Yes.
Mr. Falk?
Yes.
Mr. Patzer?
Yes.
Ms. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mr. Simard?
No.
Mr. Angus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay.
Clause 189 carries. Shall Clause 190 carry? Please call the roll.
Mr. Aldag?
Yes.
Mr. Bruson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Madame Lapointe?
Oui.
Mr. Charbera?
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen?
Yes.
Mr. Falk?
Yes.
Mr. Patzer?
Yep.
Ms. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mr. Simard?
No.
Mr. Angus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay.
Clause 190 carries.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Mr. Patzer.
Yeah, sorry, I just have a quick question. You said previously that it was clause 2, at least I heard you say 209. Did you mean 219?
Sorry, 209.
209.
209. So we are now,
Yeah, because I don't have a amendment for 209.
hold on.
Unless I'm just missing something.
No,
but you don't either. So.
what did it, just one sec. The reason we stop at 209 because clause 210 starts part 3 of the bill. And so we will go to 209, then we will shift to part 3 of Bill C-49, and then we'll start again with the clauses with 210 and onwards. Does that make sense?
Yes, that
Okay.
that does.
Does
make
that clarify
sense.
for everybody around the table? Yeah?
Yeah, I think that I'm. Yeah, that's good for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would we like to would we like to carry with unanimous the grouping of 191 to 209? Mr. Patzer?
Yeah, that's to 209. That's fine.
Yeah, okay. So shall clause 191 to clause 209 carry?
Yes.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Aldag?
Yes.
Mr. Bruson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Madame Lapointe?
Oui.
Mr. Charbera?
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen?
Yes.
Mr. Falk?
This
Yes.
might be the perfect time. to
Mr.
do it.
Patzer?
Yes.
Ms. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mr. Simard?
No.
Mr. Angus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay.
Clauses 191 to 209 carry. Now we will proceed to part 3 of Bill C-49. There are no amendments submitted to clauses 210 to 219. Do we have unanimous consent to group them for the vote? Yes, okay. Shall clauses 210 to 219 carry? Please call the roll.
Mr. Aldag?
Yes.
Mr. Bruson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Madame Lapointe?
Oui.
Mr. Charbera?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dreeshen?
Yes.
Mr. Falk?
Yes.
Mr. Patzer?
Yes.
Ms. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mr. Simard?
No.
Mr. Angus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 1 nay.
Clauses 210 to 219 carry.
Chair.
Yes.
Thanks, Chair.
Sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Stubbs.
Thank you. Just given the conversations we have been having about uncertainty and about energy, I would just like to move the motion that I submitted on Friday, April 5th, Chair. Just want to address the issue of LNG exports from Canada and talk a little bit about why committee members here at Natural Resources should support the motion to ask the Minister of Natural Resources to come to this committee to talk about Canada taking the moral, political, geopolitical security, sovereignty, and energy and food poverty reasons that Canada should take the opportunity to be able to provide LNG around the world, and with particular to Canada's allies. So the motion that I submitted on April 5th says, quote, given that the Prime Minister of Greece recently stated that Greece would, quote, of course, be interested in purchasing Canadian LNG, noting that Greece is, quote, a big entry point for LNG, not just for the Greek market, but also for the Balkans and for Eastern Europe, and that, as the Prime Minister of Greece said, that, quote, theoretically they could even supply Ukraine. The leaders of Germany and Japan have made similar remarks during their state visits to Canada in the past couple of months and couple of years. The Minister of Natural Resources recently stated in a CTV interview that, quote, we are not interested in investing in LNG facilities. That's the role of the private sector. They need to assess the business case and make the investments. Given that the private sector has assessed the business case for Canadian LNG positively and has repeatedly tried to invest in LNG development and export facilities in Canada, evidenced by the fact that there have been 18 proposals for LNG projects submitted to the federal government, and that despite this, the Liberal government has consistently delayed these LNG projects, and as a result, the only LNG project currently under construction in Canada is one that was approved by the previous Conservative government. That the committee, one, report its concern regarding this matter to the House of Commons, and two, invite the Minister of Natural Resources to testify before the committee regarding his comments for no less than 2 hours on or before April 18th, 2024. I just want to give some context for why to make the case for why elected members of the Natural Resources Committee should support this motion and invite the Minister to appear. First of all, of course, Conservatives agree in principle that what should happen is a government should set attractive fiscal, regulatory, and investment conditions so that private sector proponents can bring home big projects, jobs, and money to Canada while helping to expand and accelerate Canada's environmentally responsible oil and gas, other energies, and other technologies, but in particular LNG in the near term to European allies. We Conservatives agree that that oil and gas projects and export projects and pipelines and energy infrastructure should not require taxpayer subsidies or dollars, and that, of course, this has been happening in recent years precisely because of the NDP Liberals' anti-energy red tape, gatekeeping, permitting timelines, uncertainty, and anti-energy messages and policies that have both driven investment in major energy projects out of Canada, primarily into the United States, and also, of course, therefore, have driven a brain drain Canadian jobs, money, and businesses into other jurisdictions as well. It should be noted, of course, that Greek Prime Minister was the first Greek leader to come to Canada in more than 40 years. So it is a big deal that here on this goodwill visit to discuss, quote unquote, shared interests with our Prime Minister of Canada, that he said in Canada and in the media that his country would like to start importing Canadian LNG, and that Canada would, he said, quote, absolutely be an ideal partner. The Greece's Prime Minister said, made that point that Greece is a big entry point for LNG, for obviously the Greek market, but also for Eastern Europe in general. And he specifically commented on the fact that a supply of Canadian LNG could help support Ukraine in real ways as they fight Putin's illegal aggression and attack on them by breaking dependence on Putin's oil and gas in the region. And he told Canada and Canadians that Greece is putting the finishing touches on a major facility to start importing and processing LNG tankers. Of course, the that great Prime Minister just follows in the footsteps of other Canadian allies and world leaders who have been asking for a supply of Canadian LNG, including the Japanese Prime Minister and the German Chancellor. And of course, mind-bogglingly, the Prime Minister of Canada said that there was no business case for the development of Canadian LNG. So first of all, he's apparently the only world leader and only guy in the entire discussion who thinks that there isn't a business case for Canadian LNG. But what, of course, is actually happening is death by delay, which is because this anti-energy government has increased permitting timelines, increased taxes, pancaked and layered these anti-energy policies and laws that deter investment and then jeopardize even approved projects from being able to get built. What has actually happened is that is the reality, which is that fiscal and regulatory conditions attracting projects of that size with that investment, with that risk, and with those job numbers, the regulatory and fiscal conditions passed by governments are inextricably linked and inherently embedded in the private sector's assessment of what is a good business case. The problem in Canada's scenario is our domestic government's anti-energy policies, red tape, and laws. The problem in Canada's scenario is a Prime Minister of Canada being the only person in the country saying that there's no case, being the only person in the country, and apparently also among world leaders, saying there's no business case for Canadian LNG. I think it's important to note, of course, that the requests for Canadian LNG have happened by more world leaders. For example, in June 2022, Ukraine's ambassador issued a call for Canadian oil and gas companies to help in the fight against Putin's attack by entering and expanding into the European market with LNG. She said at that time, quote, Canadian companies, we do think, should take the opportunity to enter and expand in the European Union market. And I'm sure, Chair, you also being from the province of Alberta, major natural gas area in this country, among many others, right across Canada, I'm sure that you would agree with the importance of expanding natural gas development and exporting LNG around the world to help break dependency on despots and dictators with much lower environmental track records and almost no human and labor rights or standards to speak of. And of course, also in 2022, Latvia's ambassador made it known that they would welcome shipments of Canadian LNG to help Europe reduce its dependence on Russian gas. He said, quote, we are trying to build a resilient energy system. If Canada is going to invest in LNG, we would wholeheartedly support it. But of course, the reality is that after 9 years, today, Canada still doesn't export any LNG, despite being the 5th largest natural gas producer in the world. And it is precisely because of the NDP Liberals' domestic anti-energy policies and red tape that's bad for Canada, but good for all of Canada's global competitors, good for the United States, our biggest energy competitor and customer, and good for the top 10 major oil and gas competitive regimes across the country, almost none of whom are democracies, almost all of whom are dictators and despots. Because the truth is, of course, that there have been 18 LNG proposals made in Canada, and under the last 8 to 9 years of these NDP Liberals, 0 of them are built. Only 3 have been approved, and only 1 is actually currently under construction, which of course was approved by the previous Conservative government, but then delayed by the Liberals after they formed government, after which they did give another green light. But that, of course, was a delay in itself. So the reality is that because of Prime Minister Trudeau's anti-energy messages about Canadian LNG, and because of the suite of anti-energy policies and laws passed by this government in the last 9 years, Canada has almost, the NDP Liberals have almost left Canada completely behind. We have almost missed entirely the opportunity, both our moral, our political, our security, our sovereignty, and our energy and food poverty reasons. Regardless, we have almost missed entirely the opportunity for Canada to participate in what is obviously a global role that is demanded by world leaders. including very significantly our allies around the world in various conflicts combating hostile regimes to Canada and to the free world. And of course, Warren Buffett, he canceled 50% of funding that he was prepared to invest in for the Saguenay LNG plant because of, quote, instability, quote, in the current Canadian political context. And he, of course, diplomatically means the anti-energy regulatory and various anti-energy policies and laws passed by this government. But what's important, I see the NDP Liberals sort of try to pretend that they're these external observers and like they have nothing to do with this. They like to blame global trends and things happening around the world to rationalize what are unique Canadian situations actually caused by their own policies and legislation. So to make that point, make sure that Canadians know, it's not just me saying it. Here's the contrast of what's happened with the United States on almost the exact same time frame, where 18 LNG proposals have been made to this government, but most have been mothballed or withdrawn by their private sector proponents because of these anti-energy NDP Liberals. In that same time frame, 7 LNG terminals have been constructed, not just approved, they've been constructed in the U.S. 20 more have been approved. And they're saying recently that 5 more will be open by 2028. So in that same time frame, the United States has become the world's leading LNG exporter. And their exports are expected to double by 2030. So what is wild about this is that then in January, the Biden administration announced that they would just do a pause on their permit approvals for LNG projects. But the reality is, of course, this is after they've already moved forward to ensure that the U.S. Dominates the global market. While our own Prime Minister, against the best interests of Canada and Canadians, have let Canada fall behind. And I think it is incomprehensible that instead of taking the opportunity for Canada to lead in North America, that the Natural Resources Minister praised the pause, and then he did say that it would create an opportunity for Canada, except that, of course, the numbers show that it's his own government that has driven LNG exports, projects, jobs, and money out away from Canada, and almost lost that opportunity for all of us. So it behooves Canadians to ask, like, what are the consequences of all this? What does this actually mean? Well, this is what it means. It means that in the midst of a global energy and food poverty crisis, in the midst of a skyrocketing cost of living crisis in Canada, driven by inflationary deficit spending by the NDP Liberals that have also increased interest rates and are making life more and more unaffordable for Canadians, and of course, even despite the fact that European allies are begging Canada to help supply the energy needs for their citizens, for their countries, and to reduce dependence on despots and dictators, it is just mind-boggling that the Prime Minister continues to say that there isn't a business case for Canadian LNG, and the Natural Resources Minister has not bothered to take that opportunity, that window for Canada that they've almost already completely lost. It is also mind-boggling, of course, given the debate in Canada around support for Ukraine against Putin's illegal attack. There are lots of great words that come from the Liberals, and they have taken measures to support Ukraine. But it is blindingly and wildly obvious to me that the biggest ways to help support Ukraine, in addition to sending weapons, are, of course, just to send Canadian LNG and energy and other technologies to be able to break their dependence on Putin and Putin's energy control of the entire region. But of course, this government instead signed off on permits to actually send turbines to help Putin's own gas pipeline to fund his war. So let's talk about what else has happened since that. Well, this has happened. France has signed a 27-year agreement with Qatar for LNG. Germany has signed a 15-year deal with Qatar for LNG. Netherlands signed a 27-year deal with Qatar for LNG. China signed a 27-year deal with Qatar for LNG. India signed a 20-year deal with Qatar for LNG just last month. And you'll note a week ago, the Indian Prime Minister was talking about how they're ramping up coal, of course, and the benefit it will provide to many of their citizens who are also suffering food and energy poverty and live in places that are not as industrialized and don't yet get to live in the same standard of living and quality of life that many Canadians and people in North America get to enjoy. Japan is also currently in talks with Qatar to secure LNG imports from them after our Prime Minister turned them away. And I think Canadians should get to know that, of course, in the midst of all of this, Hamas, the leader of the terrorist organization wreaking havoc in Gaza and on Israel, lives in Qatar. So these are the real geopolitical, security, sovereignty consequences of this Prime Minister, his minister, and the NDP Liberal anti-energy costly coalition. It's clear that the world wants and needs more Canadian LNG, but what has happened after 9 years of this anti-energy government is that our allies are forced to sign deals with despots, with countries that are home to terrorist organization leaders. And the result is also that our biggest energy competitor, customer, and North American ally is outpacing Canada. Mexico was just announced a couple of months ago that they are also going to have a goal to ramp up their LNG development and export. So we may also, this anti-energy NDP Liberal government and anti-energy Prime Minister apparently are going to be just fine with Mexico also outpacing Canada on the continent for LNG development and exports. It's absolutely mind-boggling, but just clear from a common sense conservative perspective that the reality of Prime Minister Trudeau's anti-energy policies and messages are that they actually enrich regimes that sponsor terrorism and enrich regimes that are attacking allies, including the people of Ukraine that these NDP Liberals like to talk about supporting. So to make clear, common sense conservatives would expand and accelerate traditional oil and gas development in Canada. We would expand and accelerate LNG approvals and exports from Canada. We would ensure that private sector proponents have clarity, certainty, predictability, fairness, and the backing of a government to build their projects once approved after they've gone through Canada's expert and unparalleled regulatory assessment regime. And so for these reasons, I do hope that the elected members from all parts of this country on the Natural Resources Committee will support this motion to discuss this issue in further depth, and also invite the Minister of Natural Resources to be present at the committee to join this discussion. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Stubbs, for presenting your motion. I have a speaking list established. I'll go to Ms. Jones, and then I'll go to other speakers after Ms. Jones. Ms. Jones? Ms. Jones, go ahead. I have Jeremy, I have Ms. Jones, and I have you, Mr. Patzer, and then I have Mr. Cerbera, and then I have Mr. Small.
No. Point of order.
So I will go to you, Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate that. And I just want to say that we have been very active on the agenda of moving forward on energy projects in Canada. We have launched more investment in clean energy initiatives than any other government in our history. We're helping communities right across Canada be able to transition from diesel generation to clean energy technologies and alternatives, and we're continuing to do that. What we've also found in this case is a huge reception by companies, especially companies that are working in rural, remote regions across Canada. We've had a tremendous rapport with mining companies in particular who want to get to a place where they're promoting green minerals and green products in the market. And they take this very seriously because they know that we live in a world today, a world where we know to be competitive, to get the best market value for our products, we've got to have green products. We've got to be able to enter a supply chain that is delivering what the world will be demanding. And that's what we're doing in Canada. I don't expect my colleagues to completely understand the pace at which we're moving towards a clean environment, the way we're launching incentives to ensure that we are a country that is not going to be a follower, but to be a leader in what the world markets are going to need. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in Canada today, we have more mining development and interest in growing the resource economy than we've probably had in a very, very long time. And that is because they see the opportunity to work with a government that is making concrete investments, that has a vision for where we want to go in Canada and in the world in bringing those markets, bringing commodities to those markets, but also because they know it's creating jobs, good jobs in communities. And I think that's critical when you look at the layout of Canada today and the fact that no matter where you live, you should have those opportunities and you should be able to have options for change. And I think as a government, we are certainly giving people that right across the north. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to move that we adjourn debate on the motion that has been put forward, because I know I could spend at least the next 2 hours just talking about the great initiatives that we have launched around alternate energy development and the plan we have to continue to grow that. The Atlantic Accord that we're dealing with today is just a small fraction of that. And the fact that the Conservatives have not been supportive of at all of what the people in Newfoundland and Labrador and the people in Nova Scotia is wanting to do is absolutely shameful. They talk about creating a new economy, and when those provinces are willing to step up to do just that, they launch ways to put impediments and challenges in their path so they can't achieve their vision and their goals that they have for their provinces. So I'd just like to say, Mr. Speaker, that
Point of order.
and adjourn.
Hold one sec. I have a point of order from Mr. Small.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find it extremely rich to hear these comments from my colleague from Labrador, given the fact that she advocates for bottom trawling for northern cod. Bottom trawling releases enormous amounts of carbon. It's been proven.
Mr. Small, I'm going to ask you to hold. I'm going to ask you to hold. I'm going to go to Mr. Angus on a point of order. Go ahead, Mr. Angus.
Is she asking to adjourn debate? Because if she is, then there's no debate about that. So
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order.
Okay, so thank you. I'm going to go to you, Mr. Patzer, on a point of order on what's your point of order on Mr. Angus's point of order?
Yeah, my point of order is on Mr. Angus's point of order. Ms. Jones obviously did not say that. So Mr. Small was just merely wanting to defend the fact that Conservatives are being gaslit in this point, because the whole entire point of the debate on this bill has been to do what's right by the provinces.
Mr. Patzer, I'll ask everybody to hold. I've heard all the point of orders. Ms. Jones did ask for adjournment, but she was finishing up, and then a point of order was called by Mr. Small. Procedurally, I did not hear anything from you, Mr. Small. You were debating on your... and I've heard further debate as well. So Ms. Jones did have the floor. She was wrapping up her debate. She did ask for a motion to adjourn. And I think she was just about to reference that again until there was a point of order. So is it a procedural issue, Mr. Falk, or is it debate?
It is.
So I'm going to ask you to procedurally be succinct, and then so we can proceed.
Very succinct. You had indicated, Mr. Chair, that Ms. Jones had asked to adjourn the debate, but then you allowed her to continue to debate. So she hadn't technically asked to adjourn the debate yet. She said she was going to ask to adjourn the debate, and then she kept debating. So she hasn't completely asked the question of adjourning the debate. She indicated she was going to, but she kept on talking. So she hasn't asked for it.
So thank you, Mr.
So
Faulkner.
that's why we're
Point of
still
order.
debating.
Thank you. I appreciate that you're providing extra clarification on what's happening today at committee. Ms. Jones, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was closing out my comments, as you know, and I do adjourn debate on the motion.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Madame Lapointe,
We.
Mr. Barra,
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen,
No.
Mr. Falk,
No.
Mr. Patzer,
No.
Ms. Stubbs.
No.
Mrs. Simard,
Oui.
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
Debate is adjourned. We'll now go to clause 220, G24. Mr. Bruson.
This is again one of the amendments for consistency and dealing within 4 states, and I propose that we support it.
Any further debate? No further debate. Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Madame Lapointe,
We.
Mr. Sabara,
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen,
No.
Mr. Falk,
Those ones?
No.
Mr. Patzer,
No.
Ms. Stubbs,
Nay.
Mrs. Simard,
No.
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
6 yeas, 5 nays.
G24 carries. Shall clause 220 carry as amended? Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Madame Lapointe,
We.
Mr. Sabara,
Yes.
Mr. Dreeshen, Mr. Falk,
No.
Mr. Patzer,
No.
Ms. Stubbs,
No.
Mrs. Simard,
No.
Mr. Angus,
Yes.
6 yeas, 5 nays.
Clause 220 carries as amended. We'll now go to clause 221, new G25. Mr. Bruson,
I will not be moving this one.
you will not be. Okay. So we will then move to clause 221. Shall clause 221 carry? Please call the roll.
Mr. Eldag,
Yes.
Mr. Bruson,
Yep, point of order, Mr. Chair. I'm just confused because you jumped to it, but there's already an amendment that I was trying to figure out. There's G25.1 that has not been called. That's why I'm sorry. That's why I'm having a moment. I withdrew 25, but there's a 25.1.
New. G25, she said she's not moving because there's a new one, 25. It doesn't show on this sheet.
We'll suspend for a moment. Colleagues, there was an error in Mr. Bruson's. She would like to move that, but is there consent to allow Mr. Bruson to move her amendment? There was an error in her package, I believe, and what she thought of what the clause was and what it wasn't. So I'm just asking
Point of
if
order,
colleagues, and I'll go to you. Go ahead, Mr. Patzer.
Thanks, Chair. I do believe it'd be helpful if Mr. Bruson explained the point of like why, what happened and what
Sure.
is now happening and going on here, right? I think she can ask for unanimous consent through
Okay.
you,
Yep.
not you doing it for her.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Patzer. Mr. Bruson, I will turn it over to you.
In short, the former G25, which was the one that I had sought to withdraw, was missing a word in it. There had been new wording, which was what I had as a 25.1, but appears as new G25 that includes that one word. So it's a one-word discrepancy between the two, with the thought that in withdrawing it, I was allowing the space for the new one to be moved, G25.1, but instead, in the package as a discrepancy, it's called new G25. If that's clear as mud, basically, one had the word not, one didn't have the word not, it needs the word not, and there is just a discrepancy between which one has it. So I'm seeking consent to then move the new G25, or what I had as G25.1, which has the word not.
Thank you, Mr. Bruson. I'll go to you, Mr. Dreeshen.
going back to what you had indicated earlier, Mr. Chair, you had said that if there are any sub-amendments, and whether or not it's a one-word situation or not, but if there's any sub-amendments, that they have to be in writing, so that we would have to see that, and of course we would need to have this in both official languages. So are you prepared in a situation like this to allow for sub-amendments to be presented on a motion, on an amendment that comes from the floor, because technically it is coming from the floor?
So just to clarify, thank you, Mr. Dreeshen, for asking for clarification on that. No, the rules still stand and apply as they were stated earlier. What Mr. Bruson, I think, stated was that she had an error on her amendment, and she just was written in the package as new G25, and she had it as G25-1. So she's not moving a sub-amendment, she's moving an amendment. And what she asked for was for consent to be able to just move her amendment that was presented in the package.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Chair, that wasn't, I wasn't suggesting that she was doing a sub-amendment. I was trying to get clarification based on what you had said earlier in the day, that if there was to be a sub-amendment to an amendment, that it had to be in writing. And it makes it very difficult for anyone, whether it be this amendment or not, to be able to come up with a sub-amendment when it is presented in this fashion. So I just want to know if there happened to be another amendment that came up, whether or not we would be restricted as far as applying a sub-amendment based on what you had said earlier.
What I said earlier stands. This was an amendment that was put in writing, which is here. There was I believe what Mr. Bruson said, there was a miscommunication with the numbering of this. The amendment is the same. Her numbering and the numbering that it was presented at was different, so she misinterpreted, and I don't want to speak on Mr. Bruson's on her behalf, but I hope that clarifies what her intent was. She does want to move the amendment that was provided. It's not a new amendment. Okay. It's not a sub-amendment. It's the same amendment. She just had an error that she overlooked on the numbering of it. That's what it was. So it was a technical issue on her end. But once again, sorry, Mr. Bruson, I think that's what your intent was, and I hope that clarifies things. Go ahead, Mr. Patser.
Yeah, so what I heard Ms. DeBruson say was actually that there was a word not included in the original package that was sent out, that she was wanting to either have it removed or have it added.